Those things don't work on a large scale. You know what does work? Being relatable. There is a reason that the teachers who go the extra mile for their students to make it interesting are head and shoulders above their counterparts. I mean, Huffington Post posted a video about a physics teacher who lights his hand on fire and does all this really cool stuff with physics to, potato cannons and stuff like that to get his students interested in physics. And anybody who's had that great teacher, that fantastic teacher who makes things interesting, understands what I'm talking about. I had a history teacher that used to dress up as different figures from history and march around the cafeteria like a moron, shouting not obscene, but random things about history. I'll never forget my first week of high school. This teacher, the same guy, dressed up in like this tribal outfit and was shouting, "I am Gilgamesh." Now, if you don't know who Gilgamesh is, I always remember because my teacher dressed up as him in the cafeteria. What does that tell you? It's a Babylonian warrior, ancient warrior, one of the first hero stories that we have from ancient times. It's from Bahrain area. But that teacher went above and beyond for me, and I remember so much of history. I'll never forget when he was explaining child labor. He was talking about how they had small hands as they could reach into things, and then he did this impression. He's like, "Oh, you want me to reach my hand in there?" And like, "Yeah, go on, reach it. I'll just reach it in here." And pretended his hand was getting eaten by the machine. And he was explaining why child labor was bad, and obviously that's debunked with the fact that they need that money to eat. But it stuck with me. Good lessons like that. And that's what you have to do for liberty. We don't live in a country where people riot in the streets over egregious violations of liberty. When Obamacare passed, we had the Tea Party. And that was it. And then the leftists fake organized Occupy Wall Street with their stupid concert that didn't actually happen. They got all these kids out there for a concert. They're like, "Oh, this is a protest? Cool. Stick it to the man, dude." And they got all these low information people out there that way. They tricked them. And then it became this thing where they, were just excited to be part of something because they're tired of sitting on their couch. But you've got to be that teacher with liberty to people you already know. You've got to make it interesting. If you know somebody that doesn't like politics, relate it to something they do like. There's a TV show they love. I'm sure there's an example if you know that show. There's a video game they like to play. I'm willing to bet you could explain it to them in those terms. And that's the only way to reach these low information people. It's the only way. And I really hope that you folks can help out and get that done. Now we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back in a little bit. Yeah, these new bumpers are short, but that's okay. Got a lot to talk about tonight. Now, there's another thing I want to talk about, and it's not in Texas, but it is so relevant. It's like we were talking about earlier, legal precedence. It matters. It matters so much. It matters how you get there. Well, there's a law making its way through one of the lefty states that should cause concern. Now, there is no way in hell it's constitutional. Will it be challenged and overturned in the next 5 years? Probably. Hopefully, if it passes. But, in the meantime, it'll become law, and people's lives will be wrecked by it. Now, I'm talking about SB 5737, 2013-14. It's what's that? Yeah, it's just the docket number. It is a bill working its way through the Washington State Legislature. Okay, it's a lefty bill on gun control. Red flag, red flag. It allows local sheriffs to enter homes of gun owners to ensure their weapons are properly stored. I don't know about you, but that sounds an awful lot like unreasonable search and seizure to me. The bill will allow police to search where and how assault weapons, not a word, are stored, as well as how safely they are stored. The bill reads, quote, in order to continue to possess an assault weapon, not a word, so technically it doesn't exist, that was illegally possessed on the effective date of this section, the person in possession shall safely and securely store the assault weapon. The sheriff of the county may, no more than once per year, conduct an inspection to ensure compliance with this subsection. The definition of safely and securely, what definition? It is subjective. So that means you get a Democrat sheriff in there, he can kick down your door, come in and say, where are your guns? And if he doesn't think you have enough chains on them, if he doesn't think the ammo is stored far enough away, if he doesn't like the combination on your safe, he can confiscate your gun and slap you with a big fat fine. Maybe even throw you in jail. You got kids? Child endangerment. But Democrats don't care about that. And it's just like Feinstein said when she was talking about gun control. You know, it's fine if you think it's unconstitutional, but we'll pass it and let the courts decide. So whatever, if it's constitutional, it'll just get overturned. But in the meantime, let's have it for 5 to 10 years and screw with people's lives despite an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States of America. Despite your natural right to be secure in your persons, to be protected from unreasonable searches and seizures. Can you say Gestapo? Because that's what I'm thinking when I read this. When I see what's going on in Washington, I think, well, I'm never going to live there. When the machinists were striking on this contract with Boeing, and they were like, well, we don't know. No. The company offered it to them. They can reject it or not. But they were talking about breaking into the factory and stealing the equipment and machines and destroying stuff. If I lived in Washington, I wouldn't be living in Washington. Nope. Would never happen. If you live in a lefty state like this, get the hell out. What are you waiting for? You have to be there because you can't move right now. You should do your part to try and convert as many people as you can. And then run. Get out. I don't know if you know this, but reducing the amount of population in a state decreases the amount of seats in the House of Representatives. The more people there are in Texas, the more seats Texas has in the House. Sure, there's the Senate to worry about, but when those states are reduced to nothing, when their cities crumble because the people with sense, the people who are able to create wealth and be productive, leave, there won't be anything left there. The liberals can't survive. It'll be turned into Detroit. It's just like Atlas Shrugged. When you decide that you're not going to allow somebody to represent you, to speak for you in that manner, when you say, no, I'm not going to live in California because there's no way in hell I'm letting Nancy Pelosi vote on my behalf. When you live in Washington and lawmakers are trying to pass this bill, they're doing it with your signature under their name. You may not have voted for them, but that's how it works. That's how this democracy works. You don't vote directly. It's a representative republic. Kind of. You elect them, and they decide what you want. You can vote them out of office afterwards, but that doesn't stop the bad laws from passing. I hope that if you live in one of these states, you get out quickly. Now, there is a few things here I want to touch on. We're kind of winding down, getting to the end of the show here. Got about 5 minutes. I want to talk about a few things quickly that I think bear mentioning. President's Day was recently, and according to CNN, only 42% of Americans think he's doing a good job. 42. That's a pretty low number. Still, I think too high, but Democrats gonna Democrat, my friend. Socialists gonna socialist. 52% last year thought he was doing a good job, apparently. I don't understand how 2013, 52% of Americans still thought he was doing a good job, but I don't understand a lot of people in this country. I don't understand how you can go through life not understanding economics. Speaking of which, had a great moment at work. It was fantastic. It's got nothing to do with work, but there's an individual there I was interacting with. Austin American-Statesman, a newspaper in Austin, Texas, posted the top war chests for campaigns in Texas. Top, 25 people/groups that had money to spend in the campaigns. And one of them was Battleground, Texas. And this chick I work with was like, "Woo, Battleground." I'm like, "Excuse me?" Battleground, Texas being a liberal group, an offshoot of Obama's campaign that just kind of dragged along. And so she's like, "Oh, I'm liberal," is what she said. And I was like, "Oh, okay. Yeah." And she goes, "Well, I know you're, not." And I'm like, "Well, I'm a libertarian." I was like, I think the government should leave people alone. I was like, and you would agree with me, you just don't understand economics. And she looked at me and she goes, "Well, I may not have taken economics, but I think the government should stay out of people's bedrooms." It was classic. It was so wonderful. It was victory so hard. You have to not understand economics. You have to be economically illiterate to vote Democrat. To be pro-Battleground Texas, you have to not have a clue how economics works. If Democrats were so great, then how come Texas is the best economy in the union in terms of job growth? We produce more tech than anybody right now. The Japanese are building truck factories in Texas. What does that say? All the gun companies are relocating here. Everybody's relocating here. Oil and gas boom again. We have our own energy grid. I mean, Texas is just ripe with success and capitalism and business. And arguably, things like the same-sex ban are ridiculous, but you can't argue with the economic victory of conservatives in Texas. You can't do it. You can't be sane and disagree with what Republicans have done in Texas for economics. You can't do it. It's proof positive that conservative economic principles just beat the pants off of the Democrat policies. I mean, you look at California, they went bankrupt how many years ago? Exactly. I mean, I was young at the time. I mean, Schwarzenegger got elected, tried to do something about it, and you have to raise taxes. And people freaked out. And then Brown, he couldn't do anything either. I mean, Californians want the low taxes of conservatives and the high spending of liberals. Can you say NSF? Insufficient funds. They think they can just spend into oblivion. It's okay, we'll grow out of it. Wrong. Not how that works. But that's how people think these days. People, generally speaking, pretty stupid. And it was just great to get a liberal to admit they didn't understand economics. All right, everybody, it's been great. Hope you have a fantastic week.